Drake's story may be over, but do you know how it began? Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're taking a look at the origins of the Uncharted series.
You ready for this?
Hell yeah.
Before we begin, be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays and click on the links in the description to vote on upcoming content. Naughty Dog was founded in 1984 under the moniker Jam Software by Andy Gavin and Jason Rubin at the ripe age of 14. These two friends made several mildly successful PC games before they changed their name to the one we know today in 1989. 2 years later, they ventured into console gaming for the first time with the RPG Rings of Power for the Sega Genesis. They also developed the fighting game Way of the Warrior for the Panasonic 3DO in 1994 before they really made it big. Teaming up with Universal Interactive Studios and expanding their team, Naughty Dog would produce their first classic known as Crash Bandicoot for the PlayStation. After a few impressive sequels, the company would be purchased by Sony in 2001. This sale would probably be for the best, as the team would expand even further and create the equally successful Jak and Daxter series. Sadly, the duo felt that it was time to move on after working together for 2 decades. They left their company in the hands of Evan Wells and Stephen White, though White would later be replaced by Christoph Balestra after a year. It was after their departure that the studio would face its toughest times, but those times would result in one of the most well-known action-adventure series of all time.
When we set out to work on our next-gen game for the PlayStation 3, we really wanted to do something special, something that was completely different that nobody's ever seen before.
The road to Uncharted was rough to say the least. During the end of the Jak and Daxter era, the studio brought on many talented employees such as Neil Druckmann and Amy Hennig. But learning the new technology of the PlayStation 3 would take its toll and cause many others to leave too. The team strove to create a new IP for Sony's powerful new system, but it was vastly different from the first 2 consoles. Not only that, but the gaming industry had begun to change. Players were flocking to more realistic and cinematic games with grittier visuals, such as the Call of Duty series. Determined to not be left behind, Naughty Dog shelved their Jak and Daxter PSP game so that they could focus solely on this new adventure. And what a game it was.
I hope we're the first ones here.
Though the creation of the title was a collective effort, Uncharted was Amy Hennig's brainchild. Drawing inspiration from the Indiana Jones films and the Adventures of Tintin comics, Hennig wanted to create a game that felt like you were playing an action movie. More importantly, she wanted to focus on a character that players could not only root for, but genuinely care about. The team would go through many gameplay and story ideas, such as having the game be set underwater. But the most crucial aspect was Nathan Drake himself. He needed to feel real. They decided to use motion capture technology to get the performances of the characters just right in their game. And they found the perfect voice for Nathan in Nolan North.
So what? The Spanish booby-trapped the island to protect their gold?
No, this wasn't made by the Spanish.
With the characters and story beginning to get fleshed out, the world got its first look at Uncharted Drake's Fortune during E3 of 2006, before it was finally released around Thanksgiving of 2007. The team's struggle to work on the PlayStation 3 turned out to be well worth it. The game earned positive reviews and a few PS3 Game of the Year awards. Not only did people relate to Nate, but they also loved the side characters like Sully and Elena. With fun action sequences and witty dialogue, the game sold 1 million copies in its first few months. So, naturally, a sequel was on the way.
Your quest is over? What if it's only beginning?
Because of their struggle with the PS3's new tech, there were many ideas for the first game that had to be scrapped. Luckily, a lot of those got to get used in the next one, Uncharted 2: Among Thieves. Using performance capture to make it as realistic and believable as possible, Naughty Dog was now able to capture the actor's performance and dialogue at the same time. Uncharted 2 also saw the inclusion of multiplayer. A demo was shown off at E3 2009, and if people weren't excited before then, they definitely were after. The game would release a year later with Amy Hennig once again serving as writer and director. It was such a hit that it deservedly earned the team a multitude of awards and is considered by many to be the best in the series.
I'm sensing some history here.
Elena Fisher, last year's model.
You're gonna snatch that treasure right out from under them.
They'll never see it coming.
But success meant a trilogy. Although that brought a new problem. How could they top Uncharted 2? Around the same time, the studio also decided to work on another game simultaneously. Half of the team would work on the third entry with Hennig and co-director Justin Richmond, while the other half would work on The Last of Us. Released in 2011, Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception while still commercially successful, didn't quite reach the critical acclaim of Uncharted 2. Still, it featured fun action set pieces and elaborated on Drake's backstory. After this release, Drake would actually appear in 2 more games, this time developed by a different studio for the PlayStation Vita. Bend Studio produced Uncharted Golden Abyss in 2011 and Uncharted Fight for Fortune, a strategic card game, in 2012. Fun stuff. The franchise would then lay dormant for a time, while Naughty Dog released The Last of Us in 2013 to universal acclaim that even surpassed that of Uncharted 2.
That is a stupid idea.
While a teaser was released for a 4th installment in 2013, the studio would undergo many changes before that title would see the light of day. Amy Hennig, writer and director of the first 3 games, left in 2014 to join Visceral Games. Justin Richmond, the co-creator of the 3rd game, also left that year to join Riot Games. All was not lost, however. Bruce Straley and Neil Druckmann, the masterminds behind The Last of Us, came on to direct. What would later be Uncharted 4 would go through several delays before finally being released in May of 2016, though the studio would release a remastered collection of the first 3 games to appease patient fans on the PS4. When Uncharted 4: A Thief's End did come out, it was almost universally adored thanks to its heavier focus on story and very impressive visuals.
Hold on!
The story of Nathan Drake was technically over, but Naughty Dog knew that they could still tell stories in this universe. After Uncharted 4, the studio began development on what would later become a standalone expansion titled Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. In this game, players took control of fan favorite Chloe Frazer, a character first introduced in Uncharted 2, as she went on her own adventure. It was first shown off at Sony's PlayStation Experience in late 2016, before being released in the summer of 2017. It definitely wasn't as successful as the main games and was criticized for its too familiar gameplay. However, it proved that the franchise could still technically work without Drake as the protagonist. The story, characters, and gameplay were just as good as ever.
So that's a no. Felt like a no.
While there is an Uncharted movie in the works, the future of the series is definitely uncertain. Naughty Dog is currently hard at work on The Last of Us Part 2, but there are still many stories they could tell. Sean Escaig, co-director of Lost Legacy, has stated that it's highly doubtful that the series is over, as they had already brainstormed multiple story ideas surrounding different characters before settling on Chloe for the expansion. Uncharted is an immensely successful series, and has even spawned a novel and several comic books. While we may have seen the last of Nathan Drake for now, we probably have not seen the last of this groundbreaking series. The future is, as they say, uncharted.
Is that it?
You asked for it.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Thanks for watching Mojo Plays. Be sure to subscribe and click on the link in the description below to check out our suggestion page and vote on what content you'd like to see us cover next.